Hello students, in the previous module we discussed about the outbreak of the French Revolution. In this module we will discuss about the destruction of the Bastille fortress along with the events leading to the French Revolution and the establishment of France as a constitutional monarchy. Destruction of Bastille. Rumors spread that the army is going to open fire upon the citizen. And that is why around 7,000 men and women gathered in front of the town hall and decided to form a people's militia. They broke into a number of government buildings to get arms. Finally, the agitated crowd in Paris stormed and destroyed the Bastille prison on 14th July 1789 in a hope to find hoarded ammunition. The storming of Bastille fortress and its destruction has been regarded as one of the most iconic events of the French Revolution. The rebels set their eyes on the large weapons and ammunition inside the Bastille prison, which was also the symbol of royal power. After several hours of struggle, the prison fell. That afternoon, all 7 prisoners were released from the Bastille prison. Governor Bernard was beaten, stabbed, and his head was placed on a pike and paraded about the city. Although the fortress held only 7 prisoners, 4 forgers, 2 noblemen kept for immoral behavior, and a murder suspect, the Bastille served as a potent symbol of everything hated under the ancient regime. Beginning event of the French Revolution. Returning to the city hall, the mob accused the mayor of treachery and butchered him. The king, feared by the violence, backed down and visited Paris when he accepted a tricolour cockade. Bastille was hated by the members of the Third Estate because it stood for the despotic power of the king. The prison was demolished and its stone pieces were sold in the market. This incident marked the beginning of the French Revolution. Chateaux were attacked and looted. The days that followed saw many rioting in Paris and the countryside. In the countryside, where most people were protesting against the high prices of bread, rumors spread from village to village that the lords of the manor had hired bands of brigands who were on their way to destroy the ripe crops. Caught in a frenzy of fear, peasants in several districts seized hoes and pitchforks and attacked Chateaux as a part of general agrarian insurrection known as the Great Fear. A chateau is a castle, the official residence of a king or a nobleman in a state. Hoarded grains were looted and documents related to manorial dues were burnt. The peasants looted hoarded grain and burnt down documents containing records of manorial dues. This caused a widespread unrest and civil disturbances in the French society, due to which the law and order collapsed in the whole nation. A spirit of sovereignty spread in France. In rural areas, people started to form groups against the invasion. There were random acts of violence and theft breaking out across the country. Nobles fled from their homes and many of them migrated to neighboring countries. A large number of nobles fled from their homes. Many of them migrated to the neighboring countries. Many of them funded counter-revolutionary causes within France and did contact monarchies outside France to get military support from them to check the revolution. Decision to pass a decree. Faced with the power of his revolting subjects, the people of the Third Estate, King Louis XVI finally accorded recognition to the National Assembly and accepted the principle that in future his powers would be checked by a constitution. Tithe was abolished and lands owned by the church confiscated. As a result, the government acquired assets worth at least 2 billion livres. Historian Georges Lefebvre's views about the decree. Without debate, the Assembly enthusiastically adopted equality of taxation and redemption of all manorial rights, except for those involving personal servitude, which were to be abolished without indemnification. Other proposals were the equality of legal punishment, admission of all to public office, abolition of venality in office, conversion of the tithe into payments subject to redemption, freedom of worship, prohibition of plural holdings of beneficiaries, privileges of provinces and towns were also to be abolished. Drafting of the Constitution of 1791. The National Assembly completed the draft of the Constitution in 1791. Its main aim was to limit the powers of the monarch. Main features of the Constitution of 1791. 1. The power of the monarch was divided and given to the legislature, executive and judiciary. The powers which were earlier concentrated in the hands of the monarch were now separated and assigned to different institutions, the legislature, executive and the judiciary. This made France a constitutional monarchy. Second, the power to make laws was given to the National Assembly. The Constitution of 1791 vested the powers to make laws in the National Assembly, which was indirectly elected. That is, citizens voted for a group of electors who in turn chose the assembly. Third, right to vote. All the citizens were not given the right to vote. Only men above 25 years of age who paid taxes equal to at least 3 days of a labourer's wage were given the status of active citizen. That is, they were entitled to vote. The remaining men and all women were classed as passive citizen. Fourth, right to be an elector. To qualify as an elector and then as a member of the assembly, a man had to belong to the highest bracket of taxpayers. Publication of the Declaration of the Rights. On 26 August 1789, National Assembly published the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen with legal effect. The declaration was directly influenced by Thomas Jefferson, who introduced it. The National Constituent Assembly functioned as a legislature to draft the new constitution. Originally, the peasants were supposed to pay for the release of the seigneurial dues. These dues affected more than a fourth of the farmland in Paris and France and provided most of the income to the large landowners. But now, the majority of peasants refused to pay, and so the obligation was cancelled. Thus, the peasants got their land free and also no longer paid the tithe to the church. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. The Constitution began with the Declaration of the Rights of the Man and Citizen. Rights such as the right to life, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, equality before law, vote, were established as natural and inalienable rights. That is, they belonged to each human being by birth and could not be taken away. And it was the duty of the state to protect each citizen's natural rights. Main features of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens. 1. Men are born and remain free and equal in rights. 2. The aim of every political association is the preservation of the natural and inalienable rights of man. These are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. 3. The source of all sovereignty resides in the nation. No group or individual may exercise authority that does not come from the people. 4. Liberty consists of the power to do whatever is not injurious to others. 5. The law has the right to forbid only actions that are injurious to society. 6. Law is the expression of the general will. All citizens have the right to participate in its formation, personally or through their representatives. All citizens are equal before it. 7. No man may be accused, arrested or detained except in the cases determined by the law. 8. Every citizen may speak, write and print freely. He must take responsibility for the abuse of such liberty in cases determined by the law. 9. For the maintenance of public force and for the expenses of administration, a common tax is indispensable. It must be assessed equally on all citizens in proportion to their means. 10. Since property is a sacred and inviolable right, no one may be deprived of it unless a legally established public necessity requires it. In that case, a just compensation must be given in advance. Influence of wealth over law. The less prosperous section of the French society was the most dissatisfied group, which consisted of the small shopkeepers, artisans, servants and daily wage workers. They were convinced that the revolution had to be carried further, as the Constitution of 1791 gave political rights only to the richer sections of the society. For example, the revolutionary journalist Marat commented in his newspaper, The Friend of the People, on the Constitution drafted by the National Assembly. He commented, "The task of representing the people has been given to the rich. The lot of poor and oppressed will never be improved by peaceful means alone." Here we have absolute proof of how wealth influences the law. Yet laws will last only as long as the people agree to obey them. And when they have managed to cast off the yoke of the aristocrats, they will do the same to the other owners of wealth. A summary now. Louis XVI ascended to the throne in France in 1774 at the age of 20. He found the treasury empty, faced growing discontent within the society. He called the convocation of the Estates General, the National Assembly of France, on May 5, 1789. Members of the Third Estate walked out of the assembly as their demand of voting right to each member was denied by Louis XVI. The National Assembly was formed by the members of the Third Estate. France was put in turmoil, had peasants revolt in the countryside. The Bastille prison was destroyed on 14th July 1789, which marked the outbreak of the French Revolution. A new constitution of 1791 was formed and rights were given to the citizen. Powers of the monarch were limited and France became a constitutional monarchy. A timeline now. Important dates and events related to the outbreak of the French Revolution. 1774, Louis XVI became the King of France, faced empty treasury of growing discontentment within the society against the old regime. In 1789, the convocation of the Estates General, the Third Estate formed the National Assembly, Bastille was stormed and the peasants revolted in the countryside. And in 1791, a constitution is framed to limit the powers of the king and to guarantee the basic rights to all human beings. With that, we conclude this lecture. In the next lecture, we will talk about how France became a republic. Thank you.